Q&A chat with myself, Ayal Levy, and our amazing guest, Mr. Billy Decker. I can see that you guys are definitely hearing us and seeing us by the reactions in the chat, which is really, really cool. Hello, Mr. Decker. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning to everybody. Greetings from Nashville.
Morning and evening. I think we've got some people all the way in Europe and Australia on
Oh
here.
wow. Oh wow.
So, yeah. Yeah, we got people
Excellent.
from all over the world. So, South Africa, morning. Yeah. So, for those of you who have never been in one of these before, this is your chance to ask Billy anything you want, but try to keep it on topic. Since there's lots of you and this chat is going to be basically off the chain, yo, what I need you guys to do in order to ask a question is to put Q in brackets like this. What? Check out the chat right now. Q, how you ask question. That's so that we can find your question. And don't worry, you don't need to ask a question multiple times because we are writing down every single question. So we will get to you. And with that, please start submitting your questions for Billy so that we can get this Q&A started. But how do we turn the volume down slightly? So, Billy, first of all, I want to tell you that that these are some of the best recorded tracks I've ever come across in my life. Um, the the level of just the production alone is is to such a high standard, and we try to do as good of a job as we can
Hmm.
in the metal world. But it seems like you guys definitely have the whole engineering thing figured out,
Yeah, we've
or
got world
to
we've got
say the least.
we've got world class studios and world class tracking engineers, world class gear, and world class musicians. So it makes it super super easy. And just
Yeah, well,
for the record, I had nothing to do with any of the tracking. I just mix, so I can't take any
no,
credit at all.
I know. I just had to say though because it's kind of it's just kind of astounding because when I was doing metal mixing all the time and
Mhm.
uh, we'd be constantly getting bands in. I would work on like 8 bands a month, and we'd be getting tracks from all over the place. Some label bands, some local bands, some and man, the level of quality that we would get most of the time would just be such garbage. And it's such a pleasure to load in some tracks and they just put them faders up and they already sound great. So,
I finally got the tracks for the Cassidy and Chris Young song. I'll be uploading those to you, and you can
oh
share
hell
those
yeah,
with them. You're going to really be shocked when you hear
awesome!
those. Those are fantastic.
Can't wait. People have been asking about those, as people in the chat are already excited about that. So as you can see, yep. So let me start asking some questions here.
Sure.
This
I'm up.
one is from Robin Lejean, and I'll give you a quick little introduction to Robin. Robin has won the Nail the Mix competition more times than anyone else, and he has graduated from just doing local yokel bands when he started learning from us, and now he's gotten his first few label projects, and we have him making some YouTube tutorials for us as well. So one of our top students. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Robin. But Robin says, "Howdy, what kind of sound and samples are you looking for, even if it's metal or country samples when choosing for a song?" So what are you looking for in your drum samples?
In my drum samples, I use three on my kick drum, sometimes four. Uh, One is like a click with the attack. The second one is almost like a dance kick, where it's almost like in that 100 200 range, believe it or not. And then the other one is like a push sound that's got like the 60 hertz in it. So you blend those three together, and you can almost do any genre of music by just varying the blend. You know, more click for like a metal song, more of the dance kick for like a pop song, and then more of the push thing if you want on the country. For the snare, I do the same thing. I've got a fat 200 hertz, 180. How about that? 180 hertz snare. That's the meat. Then I got one that just is an obnoxious clang and gives you that kong kong. It gives you the resonance in the ring, so it sounds more live. And then I've got one that sits right on top. That's just like a real snappy thing. So, and I've just either made those or found them over the years.
And do they come pre-blended, or do you lay down three tracks?
No, they're always. I always start from a starting point. I mean, they're already because I use a lot of templates. So when I load the audio in, they're pretty much set on, like, say, the last song I mixed that I liked and I'm using for a template, and then I can just adjust the blend from there.
Got it.
Does that make sense? Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then
So
I always.
Ryan Beaudry.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, no, no, no. You keep going. You've got what you're saying is more interesting than what I was saying.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I always use a top snare and the bottom mic as well. But I totally replaced the kick. I don't have any original kick at all. It's all samples. But the snare is a blend, and the toms are a blend too. I always blend in a little bit of the real, and then I add samples. And for my toms, I always clean them. I don't leave the garbage in between hits. I always clean them really tight, and I always get the tom out before the next hit. So if it goes coon coon coon, and then the cymbals come, I always get the toms cleaned out before the cymbals, so there's never any bleed.
That's exactly what I do. It's interesting to me that you also rarely, if ever, use a natural kick. It just kind of sounds like garbage most of the time, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of a natural sounding kick drum. Although the clicky sample I have is an original kick drum that we sampled over at Soundstage, and I just trimmed it so it's a great it's a real D112 sounding kick drum with a lot of click on the top. It's pretty cool, and that's a real kick that we turned into a sample. I mean, obviously most are, but
Very interesting. That's quite a similarity in genres there. So Ryan Beaudry is asking or saying these songs have way more instruments than what I'm used to. What tips do you have on balancing all those instruments?
I'm a super hard left and hard right guy. So there's basically three panning positions for me: right in the middle, all the way to the left, or all the way to the right. And I will mixing to me is like I paint a picture and I've got a frame. So anything I can do in the frame is legal, let's say. And anything the client wants to do within the frame is legal. My job is to keep them in the frame. But as far as uh, painting the picture, if you paint something and it's laying on top of something else, you're not going to see it. So I'm going to get it out of the way. With panning, I'm going to use verb and delays to do a 3D thing, and I'm going to do volume to go up and down. So up, down, left, right, and effects to go 3D. And the whole job of a mixer, in my opinion, is just to make a picture or a painting where you can see everything.
All right. And Stephen Strobel is no, I'm sorry. Alan Van Louis is asking, what's your approach with these vocals since they're the main thing with regards to these songs?
Uh, the hardest part for country, uh, in my opinion, is to get the track up around the vocal. The vocal is king in Nashville. It's number one. And for me, it's hard not to turn it into almost like a karaoke track. meaning there's just this huge vocal and there's no music underneath it. So um, I just try to get the vocal sitting right in the middle and as clear and as bright and as intelligible as possible, and then just surround the track right around it. And I do that with just lots of compression, lots of limiting, and lots of luck.
So Johan Martin is wondering, what are your thoughts when panning guitars that are not symmetrically double tracked?
I still go hard left and hard right. I'll get two separate parts and I'll throw one left and one right, almost like two guys on a stage playing live. One guy's usually over there, lead singer's in the middle, the other guy's over on the other side. So
All right. Jason Legacy is wondering, was the main vocals on These Are My People a comped track? And if so, how did you deal with the volume changes?
yes, it was. The artist Rodney Atkins actually comps his own vocal. He's Pro Tool literate and he records all his own vocals at his house. He uses a Manley mic, I think. We got him set up with his own signal chain, but he actually will sing that thing till it's dead in the water, just over and over, and he'll slice and dice and put stuff in. And a lot of times I'll go through and use clip gain and just make everything the same. And then I'll lay on it with an 1176, and literally the meters are slamming into the left side. I'm trying to break the needle. Super slow attack, super fast release, and then I'll EQ it, and then I'll hit it with that Renaissance vocal at -17. That's a magic number. Don't ask me why. It just works. -17. And then DS it, and then DS it again. Double DS it. DS it once at the spit frequency, like up at 8K for Rodney, and then slam it again at 2K to get rid of that nasally harshness stuff. De-honk it. How about that?
Is it normal in the country scene for musicians or vocalists to have their own rigs and engineer themselves?
It's becoming more and more popular. So I would say about right now, I'd say about 25-30% are Pro Tool literate, where they could actually come in and when we're tweaking their mix, they could actually do the rides and stuff, the artists. So a lot of them are learning it. A lot of them learning it. But it just depends on the artist. Some don't. Some are just like, hey, do this, do that. You know, they don't have any idea on how to work the Pro Tools.
Do you how do you feel about having the artist sit there and do the rides?
Oh, it's great. I can
How
go
often
return.
does that happen?
I can go get a cup of coffee and go return emails and rest my ears. Because they're going to do the exact same thing that I'm going to do, except they're just going to tell me to do it. And if they can do it, I'm like, woohoo, break time. I'll go mix another song while they're
So
writing their own vocal. How about that?
perfect. All right. Cameron Marigold was wondering, what tips do you have for breaking into a mixing career for country music?
Uh, well, for me, it happened overnight over the course of like 15 years. Uh, I basically just started doing demos, and then nobody uses business cards in Nashville. It's all word of mouth. So you're only as good as the last mix you do. So someone, a co-writer or whatnot, hears something else or something that you do, and they tell someone else, and it just kind of spirals, and it's all word of mouth. So I would say, I mean, sometimes you have to do a freebie now and then, offer somebody a free mix. Almost every record I've done, I've gotten winning a shootout or from somebody hearing a mix I've done. So yeah, I've got no shame giving somebody a free mix to do a shootout once in a while or whatnot.
Do you think that moving to Nashville is a requirement?
Uh, I live here. I think insight in mind is probably a good policy to follow. I'll go in Nashville. They have a lot of award ceremonies and number one parties for songwriters and artists when they have success. And it's good if you show up to those once in a while and somebody's like, "Hey, Decker, how you doing? Well, I haven't seen you in a while." And then next week I get a call from them, because they're like, "Hey, let's do something. I haven't been thinking about you." So yeah, I think you need to be here. You don't have to, but I think it helps.
We call that top of mind, and it's a principle called top of mind, and when you use it, like lots of times, like for instance, posting a blog or a podcast, or as a producer, you might post something that you just mixed on your social media or whatever. It's not because you're trying to book a client right then and there or make a sale. It's just you're trying to remain part of the conversation, because life moves so fast that people will forget about you. So just staying top of mind is in my personal career, not just in Nail the Mix and all that, but like when I was doing production and also in the band life, staying top of mind made a big difference in getting tours. It made a big difference in nailing albums. It makes a difference. And however you go about achieving top of mind is kind of up to you, but proximity makes a huge difference. So,
Agreed. Agreed.
especially seems like in Nashville, it's very important. Um, so here's one from another one from Robin Lejean, which is: are you a one-shot guy or do you use multi-sample drums?
Uh, most of my most of mine are one shots, to be honest with you. And a lot of times I'll just ride them up on a fade or do the volume velocity myself with clip gain. But I've done both. I've done both.
Cool. All right. Another one from Cameron Marigold. How did you go about separating yourself from all the other country mix engineers?
I started out working in Pro Tools real early on and marketed myself as just a mixer in the box. And early on, I took a lot of flack from a lot of the console guys, like 2003, 2004. And finally, I think in 2005, I mixed my first number one all in the box, and I bounced a disc. And I don't even think I used delay compensation. I don't even know if they had it back then.
Fuck
It was a mess, but hey,
it.
yeah, it went to number one and put me on the map. And from there, it just kind of went off. But now I market myself as the guy that will never say no. You'll never miss a deadline because of me, uh, and it'll be really loud. How about that?
Really loud. Awesome.
Really loud. Louder is better. Bigger is better.
Glenn Helton is wondering, do you tune your snare samples to the original snare when mixing?
Sometimes, sometimes, yeah, I'll vary it. If To me, it's like a feel thing. If something just doesn't feel right, just mess with the tuning higher or lower. It's all I shoot from the hip, real gut instinct. I work real fast. I try to be efficient, and I don't let it hold me up. But if something's not feeling right, absolutely, I'll mess with the tone or the pitch, or even use a different sample. I've got a couple samples that do that resonant boing thing I was talking about. One's a higher one, one's a lower one. So I'll just a lot of times just swap that out.
All right. Um, Alan Van Louis. Man, I am butchering that name, and I am so sorry, but I am never going to get it right. So, sorry. Would you say, would you say, let me try to understand this. Hang on one second. Okay, so what plugins do you think are musts? for becoming a professional mixing engineer?
I tell you what, I have the same philosophy on plugins as I do speakers. Whatever sounds good to you, and whatever you can get comfortable with. Uh, I've actually been using a lot of the same plugins from day one. I use Metric Halo Channel Strip. That's my main EQ. A lot of guys use the SSL or a lot of the Wave stuff. I do too, but I have just fallen in love and just got comfortable with the Metric Halo Channel Strip from day one, and that's all I use for my EQ. And a lot of speaker-wise, I use the Mackie 824s, the newer versions, not the old ones, the square ones, the rounder ones. And I've got them hooked up with a Quested 18-inch subwoofer that's barely on, but it's just, I've got it where it feels good. And I also use Waffen speakers. It's a great company out of Austin. They hand make speakers out of wood. But anyway, I've got friends that mix with NS10s, and I can't even hear on those things. You know, if I had a pair of NS10s, all they would do would be to keep the door open on the control room for me. They'd be door stops. I can't use them, but other people love them, and so I say just use whatever feels good. With technology nowadays, you can almost the playing field is really leveled. How about that? As far as digital software and whatnot. So use your ears, find something you can work around, and just become very proficient at it. You know, be a master of that plugin.
I mean, stock plugins for the most part are perfectly fine. For the most part, I think. Um, Cameron Marigold is wondering, what monitors are you mixing on?
The Mackie 824s and the Waffen. I forget the name of them. Also, you guys can see that right there. That's a 19. Let me turn it this way.
Yes.
That's a 19 or 2001 Electronic Express $99 boombox with line ins. It's even got a cassette player still in the front. But I put everything at the end of the day. I run it through the boombox, and that's kind of like my lowest common denominator. And if I can get it to sound good on that thing, it'll sound good just about anywhere, in earbuds or in your car or whatnot. So 2 sets of speakers and a crappy boombox is my go-to.
All right. So Alan was wondering if we could have a quick studio tour, but you know what? I would say let's hold off on that. We'll do that when we do Nail the Mix in a couple of weeks, because
Okay.
we'll actually have the nice cameras and we'll do a real studio tour.
Sure.
Okay. Andre Zubekin is wondering, what do you do with snare on tom tracks and drum fills? I mean, when the tom sustain is still hearable and the snare hits in this moment, you can't just cut the snare because the tom will stop sounding.
The snare bleed through the tom mics is what he's asking.
Yeah,
Just lean on the samples more.
I guess like on a fill.
Yeah, just go heavier on samples. If you're blending rill and samples together, and there's a lot of snare bleed, just I use trigger to fire the slate trigger to fire off my samples, and I'll just use the mix button and go higher, more sample, and then if there's no snare bleed, I'll pull it back down a bit. But just go heavier on the sample sound, and that'll totally cut the snare out. I don't think a little bleed's bad
That's
at all.
exactly what I do.
Yeah, you can have a little bleed. That ain't gonna kill nothing.
You know, lots of times when I hear a lot of these questions about like problems in the track or whatever, the first thing I wonder is, are they mixing in solo? Because
Oh yeah,
I think that because in general, little things like that aren't going to make a difference when you have all the tracks playing. In general,
yeah,
not always,
yeah.
but
You know, another thing after watching, I've seen a couple Nail the Mix episodes also, and I bet a lot of the students watching, it's really not as hard or as complicated mixing as a lot of people think. Everybody thinks it's like this mysterious mojo and blah blah blah. But I mean, when you see me on Nail the Mix, you'll be like, really? That's all you're doing? That's it? At the end of the day, it comes down to just using your ears and the tools you have, and it's not that tough. It really isn't.
Once your ear is developed.
Correct, correct. But the
If
less is more,
before
because a lot
you,
of times, yeah, a lot of times less is more actually works rather than getting wrapped up and doing parallel compression to like 18 buses and all that stuff. It's like, nah, nah. Just find something that works for you. Make it loud, make it thump.
oh look,
Dog
I
approved.
just got dog approved. Yes, all right, get down, Blondie. Sorry, she made me lose my place here. Um, okay, Sean Frost was wondering, could you clarify what you mean by rides and when you mentioned artists doing their own rides?
Volume rides, turning their vocal up or down. That's what a ride. That's what I'm referring to when I say they come in and ride their vocal. They'll just go through and either push the fader up or whatnot, or use the mouse to do it. But yeah, vocal rides, automation.
Yeah, I think that the term ride is a console term. You're riding the fader,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah, just
doesn't totally translate to mouse. Oh, so do you use those?
no. I turn it on for the clients though when they come in to make it look like I'm actually doing something. But no, I mix all with the mouse. I mix all with the mouse. But I love the ergonomics of a desk. I've just gotten used to sitting with the speakers at a certain height, and I love the feel of it. So no, it's an Argosy desk, and it's DigiDesign Pro Control, just an old Pro Control. But yeah, I do everything by the
I had
mouse.
a controlled.
Oh, Control 24.
I had one for years, and you know what I used it for?
Huh.
Talkback. That's literally the only thing I ever used it for.
Yep, mine is just a volume pot, and just to get the speakers ergonomically correct. So that's it. But I do everything with a mouse, and I never ride faders. It's all uh, squares. I always just make a dot and lift it up, certain thing, and down.
All right. Robin is wondering, could you give a small explanation on how you approach vocal writing? I know it's hard to explain in words, but what vocal wise do you find yourself automating the most? Is it effects or leads or overdubs or all as much as the other? And how would it differ from verses and choruses?
Uh,
That's like
I do.
eight questions in one.
Oh yeah, that's okay though. I do very few rides just because I mix with a lot of limiting and a lot of compression, and I lock my vocals in. They don't even move. So a lot of times I'll bring the first verse down. When it gets to the chorus, I'll go up 1 dB, back down for the second verse, back up for the chorus, maybe one more up for the bridge, and then just chorus level out. So uh, I do very few rides. Every once in a while, I'll bump up just a couple dB at the beginning of a word, but for the most part, it's the same on the backgrounds. So the verse always, if there's verse backgrounds, they'll come down a bit, and the chorus will go up. So it's basically, and I just put dots and lift up the mouse with the lines, and the volume automation. So my rides look like that. It's I tell everybody, that old saying, I learned everything I need to know in kindergarten. Well, if you can etch a sketch, you can mix like Billy Decker. That's all you got to do is just make little lines up and down. It's that easy.
Um, Glenn Helton's wondering, what is your best and worst mixing experience?
Uh, I don't know if I've ever had like a worst. I've had some funny stuff. I had an all-female band in California where the drummer insisted on playing without her shirt when we were tracking. Uh, that was
That sounds
interesting.
like
It was like,
that's a great
yeah,
experience.
it was an alt rock band. Uh, I'm trying to think. Oh, I did have an R&B, or not an R&B, a rap group in one time that wanted a gunshot in their music. So they actually got a 5-gallon bucket of paint and were shooting off a gun in the studio, and we had to mic it up to record a gunshot. So I thought I was gonna die that day with ricocheted bullet, but it came out all right.
So the just finding a gunshot sample on the internet wasn't enough.
No, they had to shoot it into a 5-gallon bucket of paint. And funny thing was, is I just wanted to put a 57 on. They're like, no, we got to have like you got a U87 or I need a condenser on that gunshot. I'm like, okay, all right.
I have not had one that extreme. I've had cutters in the studio.
Oh
Um,
wow.
I've definitely had some dudes slice themselves up in the vocal booth
Ooh.
to get more in the mood, but I've definitely had some strapped clients, but I've never had them actually firing the weapon inside the studio into a paint can.
Oh
It's
yeah.
amazing.
As long as nobody died,
If you
we're okay.
record enough, yeah, or shot in the eye. Like if you record enough, you will eventually encounter situations like these. Um, Robin Lejean is wondering, are you a frequent parallel compression user for either drums or vocals? And if so, what's your usual setup for parallel comps?
Say one more time.
Are you a frequent parallel compression user for either drums or vocals? And if so, what's your usual setup for parallel compression?
Yeah, it's not real hard. It's I just have one that I call like a smash track. I think a lot of people do that. And then I've got one that's unprocessed. So I process all the individual ones, send them both to the smash, send them all to the regular, and then blend the smash and the regular into a drum sub, and then that just kicks it out to the mains. But I don't put only kick snares and toms through that. I'd never put cymbals through the the bus processing just because it turns into white noise for me. It's pretty easy.
Lucas is wondering, what processing is there on your Smash bus?
I use that plugin called Impact. I think that's a stock Digi plugin, isn't it? It's like the SSL copy for them.
I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, it's like the SSL two bus. It's called
Oh, okay.
Impact, and I think I have it on like 10 to 1. And I think it's set at 10 milliseconds and then super fast release, like over at 1. So I mean, it's just when it hits, it's just making that clang sound, and it's probably half volume. And here's the unprocessed, and here's the smash. It's about halfway down, and then they both go to another drum sub that just has like a limiter on it, and I barely catch it with a fast attack. I mean, just barely, maybe 1 dB, just to kind of smooth it out. And then I clip it. I use your guys' clip, the JST clip, and I also use your
Nice.
yeah, I also use your other clipper. And then I usually put a high pass on because you start limiting and compressing the kick drum. So I usually high pass the kick about 40, 35, 40, sometimes a little higher.
All right. Another question from Lucas, which is, did you use Snare 12A on the mix? I used it and it fit pretty nicely.
No, I used 13A though. And 13 is higher than 12, so it should be one better.
So here's one from Brandon Folsom. This is a good question. I'm curious, since you mix so much, how do you take breaks? Do you just stop when you feel yourself getting tired, or do you have a set time you stop and grab something to drink or something?
No, after I mix every song, that's my break as I'm bouncing. I usually get like a 3 minute break in between. I usually come in and say I've got 5 or 6 songs to mix in a day. I'll just start. Each song is about 45 minutes, maybe an hour from start to finish. And then when I bounce down, that's when I return. I got 3.5 minutes, so I'll return phone calls, emails, and whatnot, and get a cup of coffee. And then a lot of times I don't eat. I don't recommend that. I just power through. But that's not, my wife yells at me constantly for doing that. I just drink coffee all day. And of course, that's the secret to my fantastic physique, Don't eat. That's bad. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
So, I mean, 6 hours with no break, do your ears get tired, or you just listen at very, very reasonable volumes?
No, I probably listen too loud. But to be honest with you, it for some reason it just I, I almost think, and this there's probably some truth. Check with some audiology doctors or whatnot. But your ears obviously are muscles, or they got to have muscles in them. And just like say like an athlete trains and his muscles are in shape, I seriously think the amount of music I listen to all the time, my ears are in shape, so it doesn't bother me as bad as maybe somebody else that doesn't do it all day long. So I don't know if that's a sign of losing your hearing or going deaf, but I'm okay. I
I'd be
go up and down.
curious.
I go up and down. I listen through that boom box when I bounce. I never bounce loud. I always just get the low end right, and then I'll turn it up and down. So,
I'd be curious to hear an audiologist's take on that theory.
uh, there's got to be some truth to it though, because I mean, there's muscles in all our body, and you got muscles in your eyelids, your nose, all that stuff. So I guarantee you, there's got to be muscles in there that if you work them, and I'm totally just making this up, but it makes sense to me. That's my story, and I'm
Well,
sticking to it.
sticking to it. So
Yep.
Alan is wondering, um, why did you raise the violin so high in the original? Was that your choice, or was it more of Rodney's choice?
Because it's country music. You got a fiddle.
There you go.
No, it was doubled. It was a cool lick. So Rodney was like, hey, jam it up there, dude. Come on, it's country music. Let's go.
So Greg Gillian is wondering, how precise do you or the artist automate? Is it word by word or line by line, etc.?
For me, it would just be section by section, verse, chorus, bridge. Sometimes the artist wants to bump up a few words, but the way I've found to EQ and compress vocals, they almost self-ride themselves. So they kind of move up and down just the way I've learned how to do it, and they take care of themselves. So very few rides.
You know, they're already recorded so well, and then you got the compression set so well that probably don't need to do a hell of a lot of volume automation, at least
Mm-mm.
from word to word.
Yeah.
All right, Cameron Marigold is wondering, how often do you master your own mixes?
Lately, I've been doing a little bit more. As far as demos and independent projects, I do all the time, and I master on my master fader. So once I get done bouncing, it's done. So I don't do mastering after the fact. I just do it on the way down. But most of the major label stuff I work on, we send it to a mastering house here in Nashville.
All right. Jake Ottinger is wondering, for country music, how important are the room and overhead mics for drum tones?
Uh, I would say pretty important. I like less roomy sounding stuff myself because I lean on my samples so heavy that I like real tight, punchy drums. And a lot of times the room sounds will just wash out the drums, in my opinion. But a lot of people in Nashville love room sounds. So on some of the stuff you're hearing on the radio right now, it almost sounds like there's just two mics on the drum kit. You know, I don't hear a lot of direct miking in some of the mixes. Myself, I lean more towards a heavy sampled sound, but that's just me. That's my opinion.
Um, Alan is asking, I know every engineer has a different take on this, but how do you go about knowing when to apply compression?
Mm, you know, I use it on just about everything. I would say almost every instrument has some sort of compression on it, whether it's barely moving the needle or if it's bam, bam, you know. I put it on just about everything. I don't, you know, I can honestly say I don't think there's anything that doesn't get limited or compressed in a mix I would do. So I guess
Shameless use of compression. That's
so
great.
put it on everything. I use a lot of compressors, but a little bit of each one, rather than just use a couple and kill them. And everything just kind of sums up and becomes loud and round and full, and you can hear all the nuances.
Multi-stage compression is where it's at, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Um, Joanne Martin is wondering, how much automation is going on in the Rodney Atkins song regarding the non-vocal instruments?
Uh, Pretty much whenever there's a lick, uh, I'll pop it up. He's real particular, and so is his producer, about getting in between the lines. He'll pop up like guitar rides and fiddle and steel. They really like that to pop out. And in all fairness, you've got to. We figured out that you really have to boost something if you want it to jump out at radio, just because they lay on it so heavy as far as their limiting and their compression. You really got to pop stuff out if you want to hear it jump out at radio. So I mean, a lot of times if we know something's going to radio, we'll seriously, if we're doing a radio specific mix, we'll jam it up like 3 or 4 dB on a lick, just like after a vocal with the guitar. We'll just go wham, push it way up, and then it comes back.
So, Robin is wondering, and Robin, maybe uh, if I got this wrong, please clarify the question. I think that he means EQ wise, but where would you usually put your click and smack from the kick drum? I think he means EQ.
Yeah, the click is at 8K on the Rodney Atkins song, and the smack is at like 2K. So the three snares or the three kick samples I have, the clicky one on top is like 8K, and the other one is around 2K.
All right. Glenn Helton is wondering, how often do you get MIDI drum tracks in your sessions? And do you still use Superior Drummer for the MIDI tracks?
All the time. I do. There's a couple drummers in town that have electronic kits, and they'll just send me the MIDI files, and I'll run it through Superior Drummer, stem all the drums out, and mix it like a real drum kit all the time.
Is that becoming a thing in country also to not use a real drummer?
No. There's all right now. There's a big renaissance going on where they're combining loops and real drums. and it can get pretty tricky.
Hmm.
Like some of the songs that I sent in, the Jess Moskaluki and the Take It On Home, Genevieve song, it can get real tricky because the loops have to be locked in with the real kit and they all have to be in phase. Uh, so it takes a lot more work these days to mix something with program drums and real drums, as opposed to just back in the day where there was just real drums.
It in metal, I feel like there was a time period where 50% of the mixes we were getting were MIDI drums,
Oh wow,
like no real drums. Yeah. So
wow.
it almost became a thing where yeah, I was teaching people that if you want to get good at mixing metal, you need to put as much time into mixing fake drums as real drums because hey, we all prefer real drums played by a great drummer, recorded in a great room. That's always what we prefer, but real life tells you that half the time you're going to be getting MIDI. So you better get good at using it. So uh, Greg Backman's wondering, would mastering your own mixes, are you still completely in the box?
Yes, 100%. And I always bounce to disc. Everything I've ever done, I bounce to disc. I've tried analog summing boxes, and I just can't get them to work for me.
Snake oil, in my opinion. So,
No,
Merrick Bana is wondering, what?
I admire the guys that can get it to work, and it probably would make me sound better. I can't figure it out. I've tried. I'm putting it in my chain. I come out. I go analog back in, and it just
I've tried it too, and I didn't feel like it was. Maybe I was doing it wrong. I just didn't feel like it was that much better. Like it
mm-hmm.
wasn't. When you read about analog summing and you hear some guys talk about it, they're like, it's the thing that makes it all come together. It makes it cohesive and all this stuff. And it's like, well, I've heard some pretty cohesive mixes that never hit a summing box and also a summing mixer. And I've also heard some pretty bad mixes that went through a summing mixer. So I'm not sure that the summing mixer is really the 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 hidden like the key element here. I think it's the mixer.
The thing that
Just
makes my mix cohesive is when the check shows up in the mailbox. That's what I call cohesive.
yes, I agree completely. So
100%.
Merrick Van was wondering what reference tracks or records do you use?
I actually listen to a lot of country pays the bills, but I listen to modern rock, modern metal, modern rock. I love that style of music. So I actually reference stuff not in our genre in order to try to be different, help create my own sound. Uh, I will listen to stuff in our format, in the country format, just to make sure maybe like my vocal, if somebody goes, hey, I want my vocal to sound like that or be as loud as that in relation to the track, then yeah, I'll listen to that. And I always listen to the charts. And when new music comes out on Friday, I listen to all the new country that comes out in the car. I listen to all the new rock that comes out. Uh, but I enjoy listening to modern metal.
That's so cool. Um, Johan Martin again is wondering: is the bass of the Atkins song a clean DI? And did you process it with any amp simulation or cab impulses or maybe even distortion?
No, it wasn't a DI, and they had an amp track too, but I didn't use it. And all I did was I think I threw an 1176 on it and a little EQ. That was it. No big secret.
Cool. Jordan Dean's wondering Which compressors and limiters do you enjoy the most?
I like. Trying to think. I like uh, some of the Sonic stuff. I like some of the Wave stuff. I don't have a favorite. I really don't. I've got like
Yeah, just
everything ever made, and I'll just grab something that works and put it on. Actually, you know what? My favorite ones are the ones that look
Greg.
cool, that have the best graphics.
It's I definitely think that and I've said this before that if a plugin looks bad or overly complicated, that lots of people are gonna have an aversion to using it. Like
Hmm.
plugins should look good because they're more inviting to use that way.
And be easy to use. Yeah, I love any of
Yes,
the
absolutely.
one button, one fader plugins. I'll go with those every time. You just turn up one thing and it's done. I love those. I don't even care how they work, just work.
Greg Gillian's wondering, do you believe there's a noticeable difference between digital and analog when it comes to warmth?
No,
Okay.
if I did,
He's
I'd
also
be
wondering,
working.
do you ever listen to music when you
If I did, I'd be working on a console.
fair enough. I guess he's also wondering, do you even listen to music when you get home? And if so, what do you like?
No, I usually don't listen. I listen on the way home to everything I do during the day, though. I always burn MP4s or whatnot, email them to myself, and I listen in the car, just like the clients would be. And I do it partially to check to make sure there's no clicks, pops, glitches, and just to double check myself. And then a lot of times I'll listen again on the way in the morning. So I got about a 20-25 minute commute to the studio every day, and that's kind of my listening time. But no, I usually don't listen to music at home. I mean, my kids have it on all the time, but me, no.
It's kind of different when you work on it all day long, I think. Um,
I'm also my wife.
Ryan Beaudry is wondering.
I'll get home and she'll be watching something on TV, and I'm like, man, can we turn that down? That's really loud. And it's like it's barely on, and I'm just like, I don't want any noise. I'm done. You know.
So, when I was mixing a lot, I really wanted just pure silence when I was done. I completely feel that. Um,
Yeah, I don't wear earbuds at home when I mow the grass or anything like that. I'm just like, I just put on earmuffs to block out the noise and go about it.
and the thing that would get to me was when on tour, we'd be touring with these metal bands, and like all night long, it's just metal, 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 metal. And then in their dressing rooms, listening to metal. Then they go play a show of metal. Then they're hearing metal from the other bands. Then they get on their bus or van and listen to metal the whole way. It's like,
Wow.
what is wrong with you guys? Like, how do you do it? I could never do that.
That's
We could
awesome.
never do that. Um, so Ryan Beaudry is wondering, what do you do to make sure that your ambiances on different instruments work together?
Hey, real quick, I just saw. I know I'm not supposed to respond to this. Merrick Bana asked, "Do you have somebody who is your influence or mixer guru?" I am a huge Kevin Churko fan. He is probably my favorite engineer mixer guru out there, and all around great guy. Kane's dad.
We love that family.
Good people, great people, awesome engineers.
Yeah,
I'm also Dan Corno.
yeah.
Good buddies with Corno. Dan's great.
Dan's a wizard. Dan is most definitely an engineering wizard. Okay, so Ryan's wondering, what do you do to make sure that your ambiances on different instruments work together?
Uh, you know, be honest with you, I don't put a whole lot of verb. I use a lot of delay, but I just have one delay channel and one verb channel. But a lot of the instruments I'll just do dry, and when you start compressing them, it just brings up the natural room sound that they were recorded in. So a lot of times that's what I'll use. Maybe a little delay if I need to set something back, but for the most part, like electric guitars, I almost always do those just bone dry, and then for the solo, I'll put a delay on it. That's it.
All right, and final question.
Hmm.
And this is from Alan. And can you give your five biggest tips for making mixing into a career from going from like home studio into your to an actual studio and having a name for yourself?
Yeah.
Doesn't need to be five tips. You're not writing a
Sure.
blog, but
No, number one, people skills. Number two, people skills. Number three, people skills. Number four, number five, people skills. It's all about people. Remember, you are there to do a job for them. It's not about you, it's about the client. And if you can do everything in your power to make them happy and make it as easy and as painless as possible, they will call you the next record. And you will work till you can't work anymore or don't want to work anymore.
it's amazing to me how people skills. I really do think that that's like 50% of the battle, if not more. I
Mm-hmm.
know engineers out there who are better with people than they are with engineering who get a ton of work.
Mm-hmm.
And some people might talk shit and be like, how does that guy get so much work? He's not that good. It's like, well, he's playing the game. And if you want the work, you got to play the game too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've actually had people
All there
go,
is to
Deck.
it.
I've had people go, Decker, you're definitely not the best, but you're probably one of the nicest guys, and you bend over backwards to help us do what we're trying to do, and you help us get there. And we love hanging out. We love working with you. So we'll call you again. We'll come back. We're going to use you. And they have.
Well, I mean, I think that that's one of the best testaments to doing great work and people liking you is repeat clients.
Hmm. I mean, obviously, we all get to a point where when you're mixing in your career, you figure out how to EQ, you figure out how to compress, you figure out how to mix records. And once you get to that point, once your chops and your skills are up to par, it's all people skills. So I guess if you want to go back before you got your chops up, I would say practice, practice, practice. Mix anything and everything you can. Be willing to work for free, unfortunately. Read and ask questions. I've actually had interns over in the last 15 years, I've probably had three interns out of probably 50 or 60. And three of them actually came in and said, Hey, can I ask you a question? And I tell everybody, I'll give you the keys to the castle, but all you have to do is ask. And those three engineer or interns have turned into full-time engineers, and they're some of the best guys working here in town now. They're all gainfully employed. They're great dudes. They're working just as much as I am, but they just had the nerve or the guts to come up and say, "Hey, I don't know how to do this. Can you show me how to do it?" And I do that. That's how I met Kevin Sherko. I cold called him and asked him a question. He was friends of a Canadian friend, and he was like, "Well, yeah, sure, I'll answer that. Thanks for asking."
You just called out of nowhere and you're like, yo, it's Billy Decker.
Yeah, yeah, and he goes, "Oh, I think
That's awesome.
yeah." My Canadian friend, I mean, my son plays hockey, so that helped. We talked hockey. That broke the ice, being Canadian for him.
Mhm.
But I cold called Bob Clearmountain too back in the day and asked him if I could have kick and snare sample. And he's like, well, yeah, I'll send you my whole pack, no problem. I mean, it was unbelievable, you know. Probably in 1998, he mixed that Bryan Adams record, "Everything I Do for You" from the Robin Hood soundtrack, and I'm like, man, that is the best sounding
Mhm.
drums I've ever heard in my life. So I found out he had that Mix This studio, I think that's what it was called, and I just called, and he picked up the phone, and I literally talked to him for about 10 minutes, and he's like, yeah, I'll mail you out that pack. And he sent me a sample pack and showed me how to get those sounds. So all you gotta do is ask, you know. All they can say is no
Or yes.
or yes.
It, yeah. It's amazing what you can get out of life if you just have the balls to ask.
Hmm. And
It's
you gotta be a nice guy. You can't be pushy or. And there again, it goes
well,
to
yeah.
people skills.
Well, of
It goes
course.
to people. Refine your people skills. I tell everybody I'm no different than the guy in the McDonald's drive-through. You're going through and you ask for ketchup and pickles on your hamburger. My difference is you're driving through and I say, do you want delay and reverb on that? Same thing. Just customer service, people skills. That's all it is.
Michael Daly just said that you're nicer than the guy at the drive-through. You don't hate your life.
I just want them to bring back the McRib. I've been missing the McRib. I've been missing the McRib.
Well, Billy, thank you so much for coming on, and thanks to all of you guys for showing up. Had a great time, and I'll see you in 2 weeks or less for Nail the Mix.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, guys out there. Y'all take care.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.